Continue. So now we're recording, and I'm going to show you how I want you to proceed with making this drawing of this knot. Okay, and you can all see my paper. Maybe if I bring this down a little bit, you'll see it a little better. There we go. So first thing I'm going to do is get a sense of the general shape. Okay, it's basically, can you see these marks? Answer me. Can you see these marks?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, good. So it's basically a big oval shape, okay? Measure the height compared to the width. There's a little tail coming off. I'm not going to worry about that. I'm just going to make the banging part of the knot here. Okay. Shape of the shadow. Okay. Now, we measured the height by the width. We measured the height of the shadow. I'm going to put a line down the middle. Hold my pencil down the middle. Maybe a line across. Maybe break it up a little bit more. Just looking for some reference points for me to begin drawing it. Now, starting with the outline, I'm going to go around and gradually see how it changes as it goes around the shape. Okay, now I'm going to do some measurements and see some of the big shapes in it. You can't. So I'm going to like measure this distance, measure this distance, the big shapes within the form. Deep shadow in the middle. Where's that deep shadow? Which shape? This kind of a triangular shape. Clevity there. Whenever something changes angle, I can put a cross at it to see how much what the angle is like. I'm doing this really fast, but you can do it. I think you're going to have to do it a lot slower. One of the things that's most interesting about drawing something like this is looking for how things overlap each other. This fold of drapery of cloth goes over this fold. And even though we're drawing something that you might not particularly care about, piece of cloth, on the other hand, the skills required to draw something like this are the same skills required to draw anything that has a complicated form. And later in the semester, we're going to be actually doing some portrait drawing, and you're going to see how many of the skills we're using here are exactly applicable to drawing a human head. Okay, I've done a lot of the general shapes. Now I'm going to start thinking about shading. And the first level of shading is just going to be diagonal hatching. Squint my eyes. Squinting your eyes is really useful when you're trying to judge value structures. One of the things about drawing perceptually when the object is more interesting and complex is that it really requires a very different level of concentration than even drawing the things we've drawn so far. Because the other things we've drawn, they're predictable. If you've drawn them, you know that certain angles are going to go in certain directions. So you check one angle, then the other angle is kind of going to make sense. There's a lot of logic built into it. Here, there's no logic built into it. You know, it is just the shape does what it does, and you need to observe it really carefully, look at it really carefully to find those shapes. It's not something that you can predict. So it requires close observation. I find that close observation is really interesting to do. It's almost you really engage in a very different state of consciousness when you do it. If you're doing it well, it becomes like meditation. And you're seeing things on a much deeper level than you do in any other way. To me, it's one of the most, it's really maybe the main reason I think everybody should learn to draw is because the process of drawing from close observation is such a, I think it's just valuable for almost for your mental health. It really gives you a deeper insight to the world around you, and it helps you focus and see more and more richly. Who just showed up? Michael. Hi, Michael. Michael, I asked everybody to get a white piece of cloth and tie a big knot in it, like I have here. Okay. Don't worry about it right now. Just watch me draw. That's what we're drawing today. And the tabletop I'll just put in right now. It's going to be horizontal hatching because it wants to show that it's the flat of the table. It gets darker as it gets closer to the object. It's closer to the object, quite simply less light gets in, it's more closed off. Okay. More general shading. I got a little caught up in detail and I'm going to stop doing that. The edge of this shadow goes like this. Hatching on the table is horizontal. darker as it goes closer to the object, darker as it goes closer to the object. And now I'm going to start getting into detail. And I'm going to do more cross contouring. I could like blur this together, which might be a good idea, so I don't have a, I'm not competing with those marks with my cross contour. And when I do that, then I can actually like erase in and get some better designation where the bright spots are. And now I'm going to continue shading more with cross contour. The cloth, the weave of the cloth actually shows you a sense of cross contour because it's the weave of the cloth, you know, wraps around the form. Here I'm going to shade in here, goes in here more, goes in here more, wraps around here more. Down here, the cloth goes up into there. Goes into this corner here. You're going to see when you're doing this is much harder. It's just a much higher level of difficulty than what we've done before. But I want you to remember that even though it seems harder, the skills required are exactly the same skills. Okay, so you have the equipment to do this. You just have to work harder to apply it. You might even want to do more than one drawing like this, because you'll be surprised how much better your second attempt will be after you do it the first time, even without any feedback from me. Doing it twice, the second one will definitely be better. Squint my eyes. This whole area, I have the detail right, but it's much darker under here than I have it. Clean up the edge, straighten out the shadow down here. And then all of this needs to be more integrated. So I'm just going to throw a layer of diagonal hatching over it just to integrate it. And then get some darker shadows in here, and here, and here. I'm going to squint again. Squinting really helps you see the form better. By letting less light into your eye, which would happen when you squint, you also let in less detail. And when you have less detail, you can see the general pattern of light and dark better. So when you squint, don't only squint to look at the setup, but also squint to look at your drawing and compare the squinted version of it. Compare what you see when you're squinting to what you see when you're of one thing with the other. Just keep looking back and forth. Okay, I'm going to erase some of my extra scribbly lines back here. Lighten some things. I probably, if I want to get rid of the edge of the back edge of this, I will need to shade back here, because it's very hard to create a volume without creating space around it. Let's do a second layer in a slightly different direction to integrate these marks a little more. Drawing is, I think, an interesting occupation because it requires careful looking, it requires careful analysis, intellectual analysis, to constantly ask yourself questions about what's lighter, what's darker, what the shapes are. But it's also is a manual skill. A lot of it has to do with how well you make the marks on the paper. And how well you make the marks on paper is something that improves with doing it more, just like any other manual skill, like playing a musical instrument. Like one of the things that I remember I had a hard time doing is when I would draw something, I have a hard time stopping at an edge. I would tend to like go over, but now it's not very hard for me at all to quickly scribble down a page and pretty much effectively, efficiently stop where I want to stop. And that's just a manual skill. The amount of pressure you need to make something the right value, that's a manual skill that you only get better at by drawing and drawing all the time. And sometimes you don't even have to draw things. Just by making marks on paper, you are training your hand to make better marks. Clean things up. And this is generally what I want you to do. Okay, we can compare it to the actual thing. Now, here's the actual thing from my point of view. And then here is my drawing of it. And it resembles it sufficiently for me to be satisfied. Let's see. There's one. The one thing, and then there is the other. Okay, so what I want you to do now is take your knot and light it and start to draw it. And that's what we're going to be doing for the rest of the class today. Stop recording. Stop.